start the agenda, but first, open meeting law, Chapter 30A, Section 20E. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Citizens' input for item 1. Was there any written communication at all? And no one signed in, so we'll go to 2. The minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes of the meeting September 27th.
Motion made, and all in favor? Oh, yeah, I second that. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll go to item 3, which is the resolution to discuss tree stump removals in the city, which was tabled on January 28th, 2021.
Motion to table?
Motion to remove off the table, correct?
Correct.
Motion to remove off the table is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I said second. I meant to say second. All right, we have our representatives here from the Cemeteries and Trees Department. So I want to give the floor actually to Council Pereira, whose resolution this was, and I'll start that off and then we'll go from there.
Sure. The only question that I would have is, where are we at on this, number one? Because I realize there's 500 stumps all over the place in the city. But one, where were we at? And number two, what is the cost of having a company come in to cut down trees and not remove stumps? So if they came in and they cut down the stumps, what is that total budget? Because I'm just curious as to know if it would be better for us to hire somebody else, so that we have two people. You could take it from there.
Sure.
Chris?
So just some numbers. We've inventoried the city from Wilson Road South. We're still working on the tree inventory. So we have 919 trees slated for removal and 673 stumps slated for removal. It does not include city parks yet. So we'll be going through the parks as we complete the inventory. As far as costs are concerned, when we contract out, we typically do it on a daily rate. So our contractor is $4,200 for the day to do tree removal and $2,000 a day to do stump removal. So it is pretty costly, but they do come in with significantly more equipment and manpower than we have in-house, and can do work a little more rapidly. Another point is we just executed a contract for a grant of $20,000 for stump removal. So we'll start that project actually next week. We have 3 days slated with our contractor next week to start doing stump removal. I'll give them a list. Typically what I do is I send them a day in the north end, a day in the south end, and kind of jump around to where there's bigger clusters of stumps, so that way they're working more stumps than traveling through the city.
And some of the stumps that we have in the city on sidewalks that have really ruined sidewalks, I know Mr. Perry's group is doing sidewalk repair. Can we look at getting rid of those stumps that are on sidewalks like that, so that when your guys are, like, I know that you coordinate that, you both do.
Yeah, so either I speak with John or Mr. Perry or his foreman at the garage that's doing sidewalk repair, and when we're doing in-house stuff, we target the stuff that's around the sidewalk repairs.
How often are the contracts going out? How many days? It's $4,200 a day, but how many days do we have them come in the course of a month, let's say?
I try to do at least a day a month. It varies. We try to save money through most of the fiscal year for storm issues. So this year we've had a significant number of windstorms, snowstorms that have really eaten at our budget. One storm in particular was over $30,000 worth of contracted tree work. So it really varies year to year depending on how much storm damage we have to clean up.
Okay. I mean, if there's a plan on how to do it, if it's more feasible to hire the help, I know we have 2 stump grinders, people know how to run them. Are they in good condition, whatever? Because you're gonna have to have, you know, at least two people. One person cannot go and cut a tree. It's not safe. But I'd like to know those figures, because if that's the case, maybe hiring someone is gonna be less expensive. And then you've got that person there all year too, to do other things as well. Just my thought, if you would have those.
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's a good point. So Chris and I, in our discussions, obviously, budget season's upon us.
Right.
That's been part of the conversation, looking at trying to beef up that tree department, which, you know, a common misconception is we have a tree department with multiple individuals in it. Chris does yeoman's work with what he does have, but, you know, we often have to pull from the cemetery's labor force to back up the tree department. Which is basically two people at this point. It's tough to find everybody with the licenses, so it's one man, and we supplement the other laborer piece with cemetery manpower. So we're looking at trying to do something like that where we can beef that up. Obviously, that would be part of the budget discussion.
Right.
Something else to keep in mind too, I mean, there's 673 stumps now, 900 trees slated for removal, so then now you're pushing the 1,500 mark if,
Yeah.
you know, none of those trees. We do coordinate sidewalk repair with tree removal whenever possible. If our manpower and our crews are available at the same time that the tree's coming down, we'll try to coordinate that so that we can take the tree and then repair the sidewalk. Stump removal is a little bit more entailed than taking a tree down. You'd be surprised, you come up to a decent-sized tree, it can come down pretty quick. But that stump's a little bit more entailed. You gotta be really careful because you're working around the roots, around the sidewalks, people are around. It does make a mess. So the stump removal is a little bit more time-consuming than actually taking down the tree, which I think some people would be surprised at, but that's the case. And then obviously you see the cost, so.
Right.
And, you know, and even with the added man, you know, how much of that can we actually get to? And, you know, we're working at it. We put a plan together where we're now actually working hand in hand, DPW, tree department, cemeteries, to try to, you know, make it more fluid as far as from start to finish, your product at the end is much better.
So our tree department, Mr. Perry, is one man.
Right now, it's slated for two individuals, but that second position requires some specific licenses, a CDL, hoisting and engineering license, and right now, the current salary for that position, it's tough to find somebody to take on those
I hear
responsibilities.
that all the time. It's the salary here. We have people leaving all the time to go to smaller communities making, you know, more money and doing less work. And I can't blame them for doing that. I think any one of us would do the same.
Well, Chris is actually taking some of the courses that we required of that second position, so that's gonna help us in some of that. You know, again, you know, he's been
Well, he's taking the arborist license too.
Correct.
And you did that on your own, or did the city pay for that?
The city paid for the class.
Good,
Yes.
good.
Yep.
That's
So
good.
we recently sent one of our members of the cemetery staff to get licensed for a 1A2C, which is the backhoe and operating the bucket truck. So we're working on staffing from the cemetery to move over and help in the trees, but as it
Are
stands
you
right,
asking for any more people in your budget this year?
we did put in
Good.
the assistant forester position in the budget.
Good.
That'll be part of the bigger discussion with the administration. But
We'll see.
we're making it work with the resources we have.
Well, thank you so much. I'd like to keep updated on this and see how we're doing, because if it doesn't seem like we're going fast enough, what else can we do, and come up with more ideas? But I'll yield
Yeah.
for now to
Well,
the
thank you
chairman.
for all the information, and I just had a few more just to ask. Are there any areas of the city that you're prioritizing over others regarding this? Are there any more immediate needs for any removals, whether it be tree or stumps?
Yeah, so as Chris said, I mean, we try to spread it out. You don't kind of want to centralize everything to one area. We could work, you know, just one end, south end, north end, Flint, you know, what have you. But there are stumps everywhere, so I think we kind of want to spread that out, similar to what we try to do with the streets, right? You want to spread out what you have for funds across the city, so all of the residents in all of the areas are getting a piece of it. But to Chris's point, that's a delicate balance, because you want to keep that crew moving considering the money that you're spending.
Right.
So you want to kind of give them a plotted out map to say, this is where we want you to get to today, so that, you know, it's as efficient as possible.
Yeah, so you do have some areas you want to try to hit, but you try to keep it as far as spread out around the city, so that way one area isn't getting a little bit more attention than the other. Any complaints as far as roots into the pipes or anything like that anywhere that we need to worry about?
Yeah, we get those a lot, Chris.
So we do get those complaints. Typically, if there are roots in people's sewer system, we can work with them to remove the tree if necessary for repairs. Typically, the roots are not the cause of the damage. If there's already cracks in those pipes, that's when the roots get
Yep.
in. But we work with residents when they call for
Now,
sewage
are
backups.
residents responsible when a root gets into a pipe, or is it something that the city tries to take care of
If it's their pipe,
on their side?
it's their responsibility.
Okay. And I think, I've had some conversations with people about that and just wanted to make sure, because I say that, but, sometimes information gets mixed
Yeah,
up.
and something along that vein as well is, and this started years ago, when some of these trees were planted, you'll see giant elms in sidewalks. The tree wasn't intended for that kind of sidewalk. When you put it in, it was beautiful, it was small. Now, 30 years later, it's causing havoc. Sidewalks are lifting, pipes are being penetrated. So we work now wherever we're gonna plant the tree, we make sure it's the correct species. It's gonna grow to a specific size, so if there are power lines up overhead, we'll make sure it's a tree that will only grow to a specific height, so it's not getting into those power lines. So we put protocol in place to make sure that some of the problems we've had in the past don't continue to recur. But we're still playing catch-up with the trees that were planted some 30 years ago. And if they're a healthy tree, we really don't want to take it down. So we try to work around and repair the sidewalk around it if we can. Sometimes that's not possible, but that's another thing that's on the table.
And my last question is the $20,000 grant. What's the name of the grant, and is that in already, or is that something that's coming in?
Yeah, so we just executed it, so we can start the project. It's a reimbursement grant, so we have to have the money available. We spend it, we submit to the state for reimbursement. It's a tree planting grant, challenge grant.
Is it EPA related or
It's more DCR,
DCR? Okay, great.
state level. So the proposal for the grant was stump removal to prepare tree planting locations, so.
I meant to say DEP, by the way. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. All right, cool. So CER, right? You said
DCR.
DCR.
Department of Community Recreation.
Thank you so much on that. That's great. All right, thank you, guys. I appreciate that, and thank you for coming down.
Could I make a motion to table?
Absolutely. And I second that motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
All right, so item 4 is the last item on the agenda. We have the resolution for the Committee on Health and Environmental Affairs to convene quarterly to review and discuss the water supply and water filtration plant adopted as amended on January 18th, 2022. Can Mr. Ferlin come down to the table? Prompt and ready to go.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
So, the purpose of this resolution, the conversation, it was actually, I believe, the last time we had this meeting. Mr. Terrio mentioned how this committee used to meet regularly with, representatives of the water board or whoever it was that could inform the public on the quality of water. And during that discussion, Councilor Pereira added in because of the water, because of the topic of the water filtration plant being, always discussed and here and there. We wanted to make sure that we had something steady that could be informative to the public regarding water quality and the conditions of the plant and its operation system. So with that, I'd like to give you the floor, at least for a little bit of a summary of what's going on. And this was, for me, this resolution was based off of concerns around, I want to say it was September last year or so, when we were informed of older buildings in the city with lead pipes, being involved in this lead in the water, a little bit of a hysteria for a little while there. But you explained yourself, and I just want to keep the city updated on that part as well.
Yep.
To make sure we're just on top of this as much as we can.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And Mr. Terrio, I apologize that he's not here tonight. He wasn't able to make it at the last minute. And just a little bit, the water filtration plant down the bottom of the hill on the edge of Bedford Street currently are still having difficulties with filling staff within the water filtration plant. We are down 2 shift operators currently, as well as the director. We currently are having a interim director fill in on a part-time basis to assist with submission of all the required paperwork to DEP and EPA. So that's kind of where we are with the filtration plant. The distribution system is moving forward. We did have, last year, we had an action level exceedance of the lead within our water to homes with lead services. So that was an exceedance. We sampled 60 sites, 69 sites throughout the city. 8 of those sites were above the action level exceedance.
8, I'm sorry, 8?
8.
Okay, of the 69?
Yep.
Thank you.
Which put our 90th percentile, 1/1000th of a part per million above the action level. So we've been working with DEP and EPA in regards to that, and trying to get back down within the reasonable levels. DEP and EPA has met with us multiple times. We currently just received a NON from EPA in regards to the action level exceedance.
What's an NON?
A notice of non-compliance. So we're going to be moving forward. I feel that the notice of non-compliance does not have correct information in it. I don't think that they were basing their assumptions correctly. There was some question on some sampling that was supposed to be done, which we've done that sampling and have submitted it to DEP. So we'll be responding to that as required by April 27th. So we'll be moving forward with that. We are going to be doing another round of sampling coming up, as now we will be on biannual sampling from the in regards to the lead within the system. So we'll be doing another 60 sites, Tier 1 sites, which is a site that confirmed a lead service all the way from the main all the way into the house. We'll be doing, we always have 60 sites available, and then we have 10 reserve sites in case we don't get response from all those 60 sites. So that's why last time we went into our reserve sites, because we had some non-respondents on the initial 60 sites. So we do that year-round. We'll be doing it twice this coming year, moving forward. So
I have just a question regarding lead pipes, just before we go into more of it. The replacements of lead piping in the city in general. Are there other concerns around the city besides those 69 places? And are those 69 places all privately owned, or are there any public properties that we're concerned about as well?
So
It was 8 of the 69, right?
You said 8 of the 69, but I'm just curious if there's more lead piping
Yep.
outside of those 69.
So over the past couple of months, my staff has been, we already had a lead service inventory, and I had my staff go through all of our records, all 22,000 of our connection cards, and pretty much scrub our database. I wanted to make sure that we have the correct information moving forward. My staff was just able to give me that information yesterday. Full lead services from the main all the way into a property. We have about 770 and change of those. Partial lead services, which is from the near the property line into the house, there's an additional about 3,000 of those.
Did you mention something? And again, I'm remembering off of last year's information, but did you say that the city's been slowly progressing and replacing lead piping as the years have gone by?
Yep. So we've been under an ACO, a administrative consent order from EPA. The initial one was issued in 1997, I believe it was. And then there was a revised one that was submitted in 2005. So we've been under the guidance of that ACO and have been following the process of removing those, the lead services. Our ACO requires us to move the lead service from the main to near the property line, and that has always counted as a removed lead service. So that's what we've been doing, all of the phases of water main replacement and lead service removal that, this council and administrations have been supportive of, have removed, the side from the main to the curb stop. We've been able to remove over 2,300 of those, and more than that, so probably about 3,000 in total, whether it be total or whether it be just the from the main to next to the curb stop. So we've been doing that process for the past 22 years, and we'll be continuing that moving forward. We're currently applying for a couple of grants. There's a grant out from the EPA, WIN, W-I-I-N, is the acronym, for lead service removal. So that would be a great plus if we were able to get that grant. We're applying for another grant as well from EPA to continue to update our lead inventory. The next thing that we're going to have to do. So one thing that is also out there, there is a revised lead and copper rule that was issued in December by EPA. So this is a more restrictive mandate of lead within the drinking water system. So there's a lot of changes. Most of the rule goes in effect in 2024, but you have to start gearing up for those changes now to be able to meet that deadline.
And Watuppa Pond, and I'm sorry, I just want to ask a couple more questions. Watuppa Pond itself, we're not worried about contamination in Watuppa Pond itself. This is strictly regarding homes that have the lead piping.
Yep, homes that have the lead piping, so they have the lead service that comes into the house. The other spot where you can get lead in your water, it's not just from the lead service, it's from the piping within the house that has lead solder on the joints. It's from the old brass fixtures. So the beautiful antique brass fixture, lead is used when brass is made. So that fixture has lead in it. So it's not just the lead service that feeds into the house. So that's always the tough thing. We're being mandated by the federal government to remove lead services, but there still is other points of contact within the house that is well beyond the public drinking water supply that water can come in contact with lead. But yes, our supply water does not have any of those contaminants in it.
I'm going to give the floor to Council Pereira here.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. You just talked about, there's other supplies, and it could be the soldering that was used on pipes that has lead, et cetera, but if you let the water run for a little while, that you don't get any trace of any lead.
Yeah.
It would run.
Correct.
And what's amazing, looking at and talking to different people about water quality, they have all these chemicals that they want us to put in our water, that the government mandates, the state mandates you do it. And some of it we don't even need because we have really good water. So we're wasting money because they're telling us to put these additional chemicals in. If you test our water, I don't believe that we need them, but we don't have a choice. If you said we've started to do this at the administrative consent order since 2005, in 17 years, how many of these services have we changed or done something with? Do you know?
So we've done roughly about 4,000. We've done the lead service from the main to near the curb stop.
About 4,000 in 17 years. It's going to take us forever to get stuff done. I mean, I think we need to look at where the priorities are, and water is everything, and I don't think that we really look at the water department as a priority when you can't even get enough individuals to work at that filtration plant. There's now 2 shift operators and an interim director. Was that somebody from within?
The interim director,
Yeah,
Mr. Sullivan's Philip.
oh, Terry?
Yes,
The interim director? And he can only work so much for the water department because he's retired.
correct.
And unless you raise people's salaries, they're gonna leave. If they can get $8,000, $10,000 more somewhere else, they're gonna leave. And how many, I mean, you have had people leave, and that's the very reason
Without
that
a,
they're leaving.
yeah, without a doubt, just to touch on a couple of those things, the chemicals that we do add, some of them are required, and some of them are required by, like carbon dioxide is an alkalinity buffer that we use, and that's to maintain our pH for corrosion control within the system. So some stuff, yes, is mandated that we have to use. Other states or other areas of the country may not have those same requirements. Our guidelines underneath DEP, because they have primacy in the state of Massachusetts, requires those. The salaries, just to touch on those, again, that is something that's, water and sewer is something that's very, very troubling, Right now, everything throughout the whole entire, job market, housing market, everything's pretty volatile. And it's moving, continuously moving, and it's moving in an upward pattern. We have lost some employees because of our rates, without a doubt. We've lost some past employees. We've done some corrections. We've been able to bring some back, but we do have, with our non-union employees, we have the ceiling of our ordinances. I was in front of the ordinance committee, I believe it was about 3 or 4 months ago. Might have been more than that, I forget. But, I had proposed ordinances within there to adjust those salaries, to try to bring in qualified people, to fill those positions. And, the council didn't take up the ordinances. They said to come back one at a time. I think, it's time that, I've actually been talking about putting together a package to come back for water and sewage so that we can get to a comparable rate.
And I don't think it was just water and sewer, the ordinances that needed to change, because when people get their COLA, their cost of living increases, and the directors get that as well, they're not in compliance with the ordinances, so they have to be in compliance, and that sat here all year last year, which should never have happened, in my opinion. I thought that they should have moved forward. But then they took one, the last ordinance committee meeting that I was a member of, they took one for a position that was coming in and moved that one, but didn't move for anybody else. And that's a problem, because now, again, come June, you have, these COLA increases, and you're gonna have a number of people that the ordinance doesn't speak to that. I really feel for you with knowing how difficult it is. You had the same problems years back, or not you, but we had the same problems years back with the sewer department, and then we ended up going private with them. Now it's not the same company that we had. They were bought over by Suez or something. Have you ever thought about that for the water department side? Is it too costly?
Water department side is something that, contract ops has always been in our mind, and we've talked about it multiple times over the years. Most recently, to be 100% honest, I did look at contract ops when we just had our most recent issues. The cost difference from what it cost us to run our plants to what I believe contract ops would be was a substantial increase.
Is it a substantial increase based on the salaries of the existing employees and the number of employees? But if those people were paid what the market calls for, and you had enough people, working there, would the cost be that different?
It's not only that, any company that's doing a contract op situation is coming in, they're looking at a profit as well, so that's a cost increase. You do get advantages with the contract op, down at our wastewater plant, we've had contract ops for probably 40 years now, as you mentioned. And we bid it out every 10 years, that contract op.
But they take the person that one of the stipulations was that they hire the people that worked at the sewer department, that they continued with their employment, and they paid for the retirement, and they paid for the medical insurance, and they paid for the salary. So if you add that all up together, it was feasible to do that at that point in time. Then I would just wonder how feasible it would be if you looked at, look, I only have X amount of people, but I should be up to here with people, and they should be making this amount of money, and then factor in what their holiday pays are, or benefits, package, insurance, and that, and see if it would be feasible. Because if it's way out of range now, usually when somebody applies for a contract, for so many years, the first years are lower, and then they go up. So if it's high already, then it would just, you might be right, that
Yeah.
it's not something that's feasible. But at least I think we need to look at paying people the amount of money to be there. Water is something that, every single homeowner, every business in the city uses. And that needs to be a priority, in my opinion. It needs to be a priority to the city to make sure that that is maintained.
Yeah, it's a lifeblood utility,
Yeah.
for the city of Fall River. Without water, without electricity, without gas, where would the city of Fall River be?
Yeah.
You know,
And if we're getting administrative consent orders, we're getting notices of non-compliance or whatever, and we're getting brought down to adequate or conditional to inadequate, and we're dropped down to conditional, and they specifically say you're conditional because of your staffing, because of your finances, because the state says that or DEP or whomever says that every few years, every 5 years, you should raise water rates by $5. Or they say that you can give people smaller increases as we go along, but every time we try to get an increase, nobody wants to pay the increase, but God forbid our water turns bad, then everybody will be complaining that we didn't do what we should have done. I feel you're in a hard situation either way.
yeah, without a doubt, as you all know, coming down here asking for a rate increase or any type of change within our budget isn't something that anybody wants to do. All of us would love to be able to provide the same services for the same rate, but you look from year to year, the increases, the fixed cost increases that occur. I can tell you this year, within this year's budget, chemicals are going to be of talk, to say the least. They were increased within the budgeted amount, and the increase didn't come close to what I think the increase is going to be. So,
I hate to say COVID, but a lot of these factories that produce the chemicals, if they had people that were out with COVID and they had to quarantine for X amount of days and somebody else caught it, then they produce less. So they produce less, now they charge you more for it. And the fluoride was crazy, we couldn't even get that.
yeah, fluoride was created. Sodium hypochlorite, which is essentially bleach. Everybody knows about, anybody who had a pool last year knew about the shortage with trying to get the chlorine for their pool. And that's a direct impact into our chemical supply this year. It's, that market has gone crazy. Some of the other chemicals out there. And again, people keep on saying, well, everybody's blaming this COVID, but it's this weird bubble that keeps on moving with the COVID. The shutdown and people closing down their plants or not producing as much 2 years ago is now starting to affect the market in a big way. I was just talking with some of my contractors for water projects that we're looking to do this year, and pipe, I've heard is 4 months out, 3 to 4 months out. So if somebody orders pipe today, they're not going to see it till halfway through the summer. So you're talking of all the contractors that are doing water main replacement all put their pipe, they get awarded contracts and they put their pipe orders in June. They're not going to see their pipe till December, which, so they're not going to, and so now how does a contractor plan to bid on a project like that, knowing that they're not going to be able to start construction for 6 months, so they're going to have to inflate their cost to be able to accommodate that carrying cost and everything. So, and I as I said, I think right now, markets are so volatile, you know, in this country, and everything that's happening overseas is affecting that as well, so.
But we did have rate increases. We did have water and sewer rate increases.
But we increased the rate halfway through the year.
So was that,
The first 6 months,
it was
because
that-
we didn't, he got ARPA money to fill that void.
but it was that gap
Right.
where we were going back and forth for a little while.
Yeah, we transferred from free cash to fill
Yeah.
that void.
They had to transfer, so we took free cash out instead of passing
And that affected the
ordinance.
salary situation, or it affect the personnel situation at the plant as well?
You know, and I mentioned this last year through the budget process a bunch of times. I think the whole entire long, drawn-out process that did occur affects morale overall, you know, which plays into if somebody's here and they're happy working in Fall River, and we have a lot of excellent employees that are devoted to the city, that like working for the city. That's why they're here. And they could be making maybe a couple dollars more somewhere else, but they stay with Fall River because they like the city. But if they know that their future is in such flux, and then there's such a pay difference to another community, that's what might put them over the edge to looking somewhere else.
For a few of them.
So when
I
it was,
think it was great that the chairman scheduled this together so that I feel bad Mr. Terrio's not here, but to kind of give the public an eye on what's going on with it,
Yeah,
I think
we need
that's
that.
great, and to have it quarterly like you
Yeah.
were talking about before.
we do need that,
commend you.
we do need this information to the public. Just one last piece on that. So if you present to the city council the water rates and they vote no, let's say they vote no, do you continue your operation, or do you have the plans to bring it back to the city council because it feels like we shouldn't have to go through that 6-month process. If we know what we have going forward, then this is what we have going forward.
So the enterprise funds, how they work, and underneath Massachusetts general law, so enterprise funds, the council approves the budget for the department. If the rates are not there to support the department, enterprise funds need to be fully funded per Mass General Law. So if they're not fully funded by their rates, the unfunded amount gets turned over to the cherry sheet, so put onto the general fund. So the general fund, let's just say, so the budget is $100. All of the revenue equals $95, then the general fund would have to pay the additional $5 to make up the difference. But then again, if you don't.
And that happened in the trash department as well years back, when
Right.
that was all going on.
Yeah, exactly. So for years, the general fund subsidized the enterprise fund for sanitation. And so the general fund can subsidize an enterprise fund, but you cannot use an enterprise fund to subsidize the general fund. The only way you can take money from the general fund, from an enterprise fund to the general fund is by indirect cost. So supportive services that are provided by the general fund to those enterprise funds.
Understood. So, I'm sorry, you still have the floor, by the way.
No,
apologize.
I yield, I'm sorry.
So I think we got most of our
Yeah.
questions answered here, so I'm gonna make the motion to table this discussion and,
Sure, motion to table?
yep, second. And all in favor?
Aye,
Aye. So, thank you for coming down.
thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
It's very likely we won't need to do this. We were talking about it. You're very likely gonna have this conversation in June when we have the budget, so we may or may not have to do this specific meeting because we'll be having this discussion again during the budget season, so. Motion to
Motion to adjourn?
adjourn. Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye. Hey, Paul, you mentioned pool, but I.